In this lesson, I want to provide you an overview of the various controller types and entities that form the integral part of a Web Dynpro component. I will not discuss every detail of Web Dynpro controllers. Topics like hook methods available only for view controllers or component controllers are discussed in the corresponding lectures. The different types of controllers that you can find in a Web Dynpro component are as follows. There's first of all the component controller. There's only one component controller in each Web Dynpro component. This is a global controller visible to all other controllers. The component controller drives the functionality of the entire component and has no visual interface. Second type of controller is the custom controllers. Custom controllers are optional. They are defined at design time and can be used to encapsulate sub-functions. For example, sub-functions of the component controller. Multiple custom controllers can be defined in a component. The Web Dynpro framework automatically instantiates the custom controllers, and the instantiation order is undefined. Therefore, the coding in a custom controller should not depend on the existence of any other custom controller. Third, configuration controllers. Configuration controller is a special custom controller. It is only necessary if the corresponding component implements special configuration and personalization functions. Only one configuration controller may exist at any component. Any controller can access the configuration controller, but the configuration controller cannot access any other controller. Fourth, view controllers. Each view consists of a layout part and one view controller. This controller handles the view-specific flow logic, for example, checking the user input and handling user actions. And fifth, the window controllers. Each window has exactly one window controller. You can use this controller to handle the data passed through the inbound plugs when it is reused as a child controller. You can call the methods of this controller from the inbound plug methods of the window. At runtime, all controller instances are singletons with respect to their parent components. This is also true for view controllers, and therefore embedding a view in a view assembly more than once is not allowed. The context and the methods defined in a controller are private, unless another controller explicitly declares the usage of this controller. However, a view controller cannot be declared as a views controller, which means that the context data and the methods of a view controller are always private. Now let me tell you something about the controller lifetime. Web Dynpro generally is a stateful technology, unlike the business server pages, which can be stateful or stateless or a mixture of both. The lifetime of a Web Dynpro controller instance is not limited to the time used to process the program code and to process the user interface. I'm describing now the different lifetimes of the different controller instances depending on the controller type. The lifetime of the component controller is the lifetime of the component. When you start a Web Dynpro application, the component controller is instantiated by the Web Dynpro runtime. The instantiation of a custom controller is delayed until the first method of the custom controller is called. Custom controller instances cannot be deleted explicitly. A configuration controller is instantiated as the first controller of the component, so even before the component controller. It lives as long as the component lives. The instantiation of a view controller is delayed until the first method of the controller is called. The developer can control the lifetime of a view controller through the view properties in the following ways. To delete the view instance with the component, the developer selects Framework Controlled. To delete the view instance as soon as the view no longer belongs to the view assembly, the developer selects the When Visible option. And finally, the window controllers. The instantiation of a window controller is delayed until the first method of this controller is called. This is done usually by starting a Web Dynpro application, by embedding the related interface view in the parent components window, or by displaying the window in a dialog box. Window controllers also cannot be deleted explicitly. Each controller has its own context. The root node of the context already exists. All other nodes and attributes are defined statically or dynamically at runtime in the source code. For all controllers, the Web Dynpro framework calls certain methods in a predefined order. These methods are called hook methods, or sometimes standard hook methods. Different hook methods are available depending on the controller type. All controller types contain at least 2 hook methods, which are processed only once during the lifetime of the controller instance at the following events. First, when a controller instance is created, then it's the wd-do-init method. And second, when a controller instance is deleted, then it's the wd-do-exit method. All hook methods start with the prefix wd-do. Additional methods can be defined on the Methods tab page. Attributes that are not bound to any UI element property are not declared in the context, but on the Attributes tab page. After they have been declared, the attributes are visible in all the methods of this particular controller. There are 2 predefined attributes which are used to access the functionality of the controller. The first attribute is called wd_this, and the attribute that accesses the context, wd_context. To share information between different controllers, one controller must declare the use of another controller. This can be done on the Properties tab of the controller that needs to access the other controller. This type of data sharing is used for creating a mapped context node, or for accessing the user-defined methods and public attributes of another controller. You may not specify the name of a view controller as a used controller because this violates good model view controller design principles. A view controller should be written in such a way that it is responsible for nothing more than the display of data and user interaction. A view controller is not responsible for generating the data it displays. That is the role of a custom controller or component controller. The methods of all controllers enable you to access business logic, such as function modules, BAPIs, or methods in helper classes. I want to demonstrate now how to create an attribute and a method. Creating attributes and methods is the same for all controllers. So let's do the demo here on the component controller. I give the attribute name, give the type, and then I can specify whether the attribute should be visible only within the component controller or outside the component controller, so addressable through all other controllers. Then I have to choose public. Now for methods, we go here, create a method. When I want to edit this method, I double click it and end up in the method editor. You can see that you can add input, output parameters, so importing, exporting, and changing parameters to the method. When we go back here to the method list, we see that the method has a checkbox. This column is the interface column. That means if I check this checkbox, then the method will be forwarded, the method declaration will be forwarded to the interface controller. So let me save this now. Let's open my component interface, open the interface controller, go to the Methods tab, and here's my new method. This means that the method now will be accessible or callable from outside the Web Dynpro component. I'm going back to my component controller, untick the checkbox, save again, then the method will not be available in my interface controller anymore. Now it's gone.